Good morning and welcome everyone to our latest Indica Books author Q&A. I'm your host Abhinav Agarwal and I am delighted this Sunday morning to be talking to you just one day after the very pious festival of Hanuman Jayanti, to be talking to you about a book and with an author that has written about the city of Ayodhya. The book's name is Amazing Ayodhya, describing the splendid ancient city of Lord Rama. It's been published by Bloomsbury. And the book is not only, and I was just chatting with the author a minute back, that the book is not only very interesting, engaging, well written, but it also covers a lot more information than perhaps when you first pick this book up, you may think so. It has got lots of references. It's got provides a lot of background information, and I think best of all, this book is written in an engaging style that should appeal to a wide variety of and a wide, what I would say, segment of readers. So the book again is Amazing Ayodhya, describing the splendid ancient city of Lord Rama. The author is Neena Rai, and I'm going to read a couple of lines about her. So, Neena Rai was born in Pune, India, and now lives in New Delhi. She is an alumna of the prestigious Indian Institute of Mass Communication, New Delhi. And after completing her post graduation, she left India to pursue work in the Middle East. Over a decade later, she decided to move back to India to contribute to the country and its people. She is passionate about writing and understanding the wisdom contained in the Hindu scriptures, and she's been studying Sanskrit for many years to understand dharmic texts better. She is a devotee of Lord Rama and Devi Sita. She likes poetry and reading, both fiction and non-fiction. She's also an accomplished abstract artist. In the past, apart from working in the media, she has also worked as a fashion model and an international flight attendant. She currently runs a business in New Delhi. In her free time, she loves doing yoga, gardening, and watching movies. So, uh, you'll have to excuse the slight power outage. Thankfully, we are still live. And I am going to now invite Ms. Neena Rai. A warm welcome to you.
Namaste. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So it's our pleasure, and as you know, we try and bring new authors who talk about and who have written about Indic books and the Indian perspective, and I think each one of them gives us a lot of perspectives as information that I think is contained in our scriptures, in our epics, in our Puranas. But each author brings it out to light, I think, in a different manner, in their own unique perspective.
Yes.
So let me ask you. Let me just start from the top itself, which is that what led to your inspiration or your drive to write this book, Amazing Ayodhya, right? Because obviously, every Indian, every Hindu has heard of the city of Ayodhya, but I suspect, just as is the case with the holy city of Kurukshetra, at least a few people are not sure or not aware that this is actually a geographical reality rather than just a mythological or a religious city that may or may not have existed. So, what led you to write this book?
So there are many reasons that, lead one to do something. For me as well, there were many reasons why I wrote this book. The Ram Janam Bhoomi was going on when I was growing up. And while that movement was going on, I would be, I would watch TV, I would watch the interviews of so many people. And, I'd read the articles, I'd hear the stories. And of course, I come from a family wherein, we do know a bit about our itihas, and I knew a lot about the story and what happened. What I used to find very, very strange is that as young children, we're always taught to speak the truth, right? Don't we all teach our children to speak the truth? Yet
Absolutely.
time and again I would see politicians, time and again I would see fraudulent intellectuals, time and again I would see them come on television and lie through their teeth. And what used to and it used to amaze me. It used to be like, oh wow, it is the elders here who are continually lying. When I grew up, of course, I understood that most of the lies were made by communist historians. They would just come up with strange lies. They would come up with strange theories. Then, of course, there was a whole movement by the Congress Party, wherein and other so-called eminent intellectuals, wherein they decided that our itihas has to be mythical. Everything else in the world can be true, but if the Hindu is saying something, that has to be mythical, which used to baffle me. And again, and so that is something that I sort of saw and observed. And I used to think maybe it's just like this, maybe it's just politics. No, but then the roots of it ran deeper. It was very sinister, and it was a very sinister campaign. So my father was a diplomat. He's an army officer, and he was a diplomat as well. So when I went abroad, I traveled abroad a lot with him. So when I went abroad, I noticed that no other culture was fighting over its core heritage. There was not a site that was in what you call there was no conflict over the holy sites. There's no conflict over Mecca. There's no conflict over Medina. There is no conflict over Bethlehem. So why should there be a conflict over Bhagwan Ram's birthplace? This is something that I never understood. Why is it that the Christians get their place? Why is it that the Muslims get their place? For that matter, why is it that even the Buddhists have their place? There's no dispute over Gaya. There is no dispute over the birthplace of Buddha. There's no dispute over the birthplace of Mahavir. Then why is there a dispute over the birthplace of Bhagwan Ram? And another thing that I noticed was that I went to the Vatican. Now, the Vatican is the holy place for Christians. The Vatican, does anybody even say so? Another thing that I heard over the period till the time that the Supreme Court granted for the mandir to be made there was that why don't we make a school over there? Why don't we make a library over there? Why don't we make a hospital over there? It'll benefit everybody. Of course, it'll benefit everybody. Why don't you make it in your own house? If you're so fond of charity. So I never heard something like this being said about Mecca or Medina or the Vatican. In fact, one of the most surprising things I saw was that the Vatican was a country within a country. It also had its own army. It has its own army, its own serving army. So how is it that everything that the non-Hindu history says is to be true, and its veracity is 100% justified by everybody, but when it comes to Hindu itihas or Hindu history, everything becomes a mythology and it has to be shunned? So it was a culmination of my devotion. It was a culmination of the lies that I saw, eminent historians making. It was a lie. It was this contrast that I experienced in the world. That being in a Hindu majority country, it is the Hindus who are being, it is the Hindus against whom so much injustice is being done. So it would rattle me from inside. And of course, one of the main reasons I realized that, and the younger generation, what the politicians have done of this country, and again the eminent intellectuals of the country have done, is that they've taken Sanskrit out of the syllabus, saying it's very difficult. It may be difficult if only you learn it later in life. Then they've totally taken out the study of Ramayana and Mahabharata from the school books. While on the other hand, the Muslims are allowed to, preach in the madrasas, and the Christians in Christian schools are allowed to teach the Bible. I studied in Christian schools, so I know, moral science, where studies of stories from the Bible and other things are being taught. Now, there is an absolute vacuum of knowledge for Hindus, right? We're not allowed to teach our scriptures. We're not, you've just put Hindu children in a vacuum wherein anybody can give them any information and they will believe it. So I decided, and that was one of the main reasons why young children were coming up with, oh my God, why don't we just make this, and why don't we do that, and why don't we do this? Another thing I realized was that they just couldn't deal with conflict. So this is a negative part that I wanted to, I realized. And then it was because of these reasons, this vacuum of information that existed, this injustice that I saw towards Hindus, and my frustration at the lies that elders were spreading throughout India and the world, by saying that Ram Setu doesn't exist, Ram is mythology, Ayodhya never existed. And so I decided to come out with all the details that I could in form of my book Amazing Ayodhya. So I've given you in just a very long story, but these are the many reasons why I wrote this book.
Very interesting points you have made, and I think during the early 1990s, there was a lot of a lot of these so-called eminent historians, and for the benefit of people who may wonder why a lot of us use the word eminent historians, the phrase eminent historians, to describe these communist historians, the ones from JNU and so on. We'll not dignify them by taking their names, but people should know that there was this book that was published in the early 1990s by Arun Shourie called Eminent Historians, in which he laid bare the kinds of deceptions, cover ups, distortions, misrepresentations that had been indulged in by these historians, how they had, in many cases, falsified history. In a lot of other cases, they had chosen to omit certain facts that would that would go against their ideology and so on. So the phrase itself, eminent historians, is used in a very, very ironical sense. And I'm happy to note that over the years, over the decades, it has really caught on. Just as the phrase urban naxals coined by Vivek Agnihotri caught on. Uh, so let me so the your book, right, it is broken up into 29 chapters, and you go about it very, very methodically. You start off with Ayodhya itself, and you among in your very, I think, first chapters or so, you describe the extent of the city of Ayodhya, you describe its layout, and you contrast it with the with the sort of egg splattered shape of modern cities that just seem to expand in every direction. Unlike those, Ayodhya had a very neat geographical dimensions, rectangular, oblong dimensions. So and you have a lot of references that you use there. So tell us a little bit about the kinds of references, the kind of research that you did to substantiate what you write in this book.
Okay. So you're right. This is in the beginning that I have spoken about the egg splattered shape of cities today. And the reason I did that is because that just shows a lack of urban planning. We think that humans today have this illusion of greatness about themselves. If you ask anybody, he'll tell you we are the most advanced, we are the most organized, we are the best that we could have been in all over history. Yet if I take a look at the ancient ruins that we have, they somehow seem to tell another story. They may have been we don't even know the expanse of their sizes. If we take a look at the size of Ayodhya and we compare it to the size of Delhi, Ayodhya was actually bigger than Delhi. Ayodhya, I think I have written here, I think was the size of another American. So American cities are the largest, and it was closer to one of the more American cities. And then what I have done is that I have basically given a preface on how the ancients were very particular about the shape, the size, the dimensions of the external layout as well as the internal layout. And Ayodhya and what is written about Ayodhya seemed to be the prototype for many, many, many cities that we have found in history. And because the book requires, I can't speak about every city that I researched and every place that I researched. So I only took a few specific examples. So, for example, you mentioned that Ayodhya was, a very square and rectangular shaped. We don't have the exact shape of Ayodhya today. It's lost to, it's lost in the dust of time. But we do have the shape and the size and the layout of Dholavira, and it is like it is rectangular again. So if you see the insides, there is a grid pattern. And
Correct.
so I took the example, and Dholavira, for those who do not know, is one of the oldest excavated sites that we have in India. It is a heritage UNESCO heritage site now. And and another thing that I wanted to say is that there is this thing that somehow goes to say, this is done by the West, that life earlier started as, hunter gatherer sort of a thing, and then all of a sudden they came into cities. But if we take a look at our scriptures say that life actually started in cities. So after the Manvantar that came, the city of Ayodhya was one of the first cities to be built by Manu. So ideally speaking, Ayodhya is the cradle of humankind, because it is the first city, it is the city established by Manu. And then if you take a look at the design and dimensions, you'll be wowed. And why? And that there are more details of Ayodhya that I've given in the book. And one of the most interesting details is that a lot of people today are in the illusion that it was a spiritual city and not a city that was built by warriors to protect itself. The meaning of the word Ayodhya is that which you cannot fight, that which is unconquerable, and that which is unassailable. So it is an absolutely military city which is set up with absolute military strategy. And again, when we go to Dholavira, Dholavira is exactly built on the same pattern. And the word Dholavira actually is Dhavalah Vira, not Dhaval. Dhaval in Sanskrit means white, which represents the white sands of of Gujarat, where it is, and that area. So the white salty sand, and Veera are the brave. So these cities were made by kings, by Kshatriyas, in a way to protect themselves against invasion, so that they sort of stand the, and let's face it, they've stood the test of time. We have these ruins that are amazing, and the structure, the layout, it all, and by the way, it all matches what Arthashastra says, it all matches what the Ramayana says, and previous authors of how cities should be constructed as well, Vastu, to be to be precise.
It's interesting that you contrast this, or you compare this, so not contrast, but you compare this with the Dholavira, because those are some of the excavated this one of the more prominent excavated sites from the Indus Valley Saraswati civilization, and that gives us a sense of or an indication of the antiquity of Ayodhya itself. Now, one of your chapters talks about the kind of fortifications and the kind of weaponry that was used to defend Ayodhya. Uh, so I have two questions there. So one is, can you talk a little bit about the kind of fortifications and the multi-layered nature of the city that was designed to keep it? Actually, before that, you talk about the Koshal kingdom itself was not a small kingdom. You talk about how it was a huge empire, and one of the shlokas from the Valmiki Ramayana also talks about how many kings used to give tribute to this Janpad. Uh, Tell us a little bit about the extent of the kingdom of Koshal that was ruled over by King Dashrath.
Okay. So the extent of the kingdom is written in a form of a dialogue. So Valmiki is an amazing author, and so when Janak decides that Ram is going to be the king, and Janak decides it's overnight. So there is an eclipse that is going to come, and that eclipse is going to happen in the nakshatra of Janak, with Mars being eclipsed together. So Sun, Mars, and Rahu are going to go over his nakshatra. Nakshatra is the sign that you're born under. The nakshatra, the moon sign, and in the moon sign, the particular constellation that you're born under. Whenever such a combination happens over a king, it foretells doom for the king. It foretells that he may die, and it foretells bad news for the kingdom. Now, a lot of people think that this is a myth, but this is actually not a myth. And there have been enough researches to show that the powerful, and the very influential, like film stars, army generals, kings, popes, anybody in who influences a lot of power over people, they tend to die on and around eclipses. So this is
Hmm.
happening with Janak. This information, by the way, is not in the book. This information is available on my YouTube channel. Now, this is again a very I have done this research, and you'd be surprised to know that so I'm going to ask the audience a question, and even you. Can you tell me the most famous person in the world, and this person died on an eclipse? Can you name a person, the most famous person in the world, who died on an eclipse? She died. I mean, a lady.
Interesting. Interesting. That's a fascinating
And
question.
she
I
and I'm
had not
going to
thought
give you
about
another
that.
hint. She was a royal.
The most famous people. I don't know. I don't know that many famous people. Or when it comes to women, I would probably my list of probables who would fit that list would be even less. I'm
Let's
sure there's
okay.
some queen of some England that might fit that list.
So
I
so
know
so,
Mrs.
so
Indira Gandhi
the
was
most
one.
no. So the most photographed woman on earth was Lady Diana.
Ah, okay, yes, of
And
course.
she died on an eclipse. Okay.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I'm sure a lot of us didn't know that. Interesting.
Yes. So in fact, it is said, astrology says that kings are born and they die on eclipses. So you'll notice a lot of powerful people being either born or dying around eclipses. And what's more crazy to note is that both William and Kate are born on eclipses.
Oh, fascinating.
And in today's day and age, they would be the most powerful. And another thing I'm going to tell you is that our general who died, died 4 days after an eclipse.
General Bipin Rawat.
Yeah, General Rawat, who died 4 days after an eclipse. So the powerful, the mighty, and numerous popes have died during eclipses. Numerous kings have died during eclipses, and then this is all recorded history. So in ancient times, they paid a lot of attention to this. So the reason I'm telling you this story is because a lot of people do not know the reason why Lord Ram was supposed to be the king immediately. So Dashrath gets this news, this eclipse is coming. So he says Raja Ram has to be crowned king tomorrow. One of the things that you do during eclipses is that when you know that such an eclipse is coming, whenever there is information, there's going to be the result of information is emotion, and out of emotion you have to take action to protect and to prevent, or to soothe what is happening. You can't sort of change fate. So Dashrath decides he's going to be the king, because now you have to go into succession planning. So he decides that he's going to be the king. When Keke hears that he's going to be the king, she goes into the Kop Bhavan. She wears dark clothes, she gets rid of all her beautiful jewelry. And Hindu women in the past could never be seen without jewelry. Even today, if you take a look at women from good families who follow tradition, they're always decked up with in jewelry. So she, so for a woman to open all her jewelry, wear dark clothes or wear bad clothes and go into Kop Bhavan, it is a very bad sign. Keke is the favorite wife of Dashrath. So Dashrath goes to ask her what is bothering her. And then he tells her, tell me, what do you want? I have, I can get you anything from anywhere in the world. Tell me what you want. So then he says, and then he says he says, do you want pearls, do you want this, do you want this? And then he says, yavadart te chakram tavati me vasundhara. Now this is on page 50 of Amazing Ayodhya. And then he says, Dravida Sindhu so Viraha so Rashtraha Dakshina Pathaha Wang Ang Magadhaha Matsyaha Samriddhaha Kashi Kosala. So what this basically means
Yes.
is my jurisdiction over this earth stretches till the end to which the chariot revolves. Now, for those who don't know or those who do not understand the poetry here, it means that it is indefinite because a wheel revolves indefinitely. And then he says, southern countries, Sindhu, Sauvira, Saurashtra, as well as countries on the southward path. Now, when he says southern countries, he means, the location of Ayodhya is towards the north. So anything that comes beneath is southern. And then he says, Vang, Ang, Magad, and Matsya, full of riches, Kasi and Kausal as well. So these are the countries, and all of them are under me. So he names the most prominent and the most rich. And then he says that these are the countries under me, and so whatever you want, I can get them. So this is Raja Dashrath saying that this is the extent of my kingdom. And another fascinating fact that I have compared this to is is the Roman civilization. So the Roman civilization, which came much later to this civilization, had a concept called imperium sine fine. Now, what does imperium sine fine mean? It means an empire without an end.
Uh-huh.
So Dashrath was a Maharaj. He was an emperor, and we call him Raja Dashrath, but he's actually an emperor. And a lot of kings come and give him kar. And so the word province, for that matter. So in Hindi and Sanskrit we call them Samant or Samant Raj. The territories that are under us or who give us tax. And then the word province, for that matter, the English word province comes from the Roman, I think the provincia or something. I have written this in the book. And the Romans,
Correct.
they had copied this concept, wherein the empires without an end. It seems to be very influenced by what Dashrath says. And the reason is, why does Dashrath say that? Dashrath says that because he is in the lineage of Manu, and Manu is the progenitor of the human species. So he, by default, is the lord of all humans. So the whole of earth comes under him. This is the reason.
Correct. And I think you contrast or you compare the how Ayodhya or Koshal would have had to collect taxes and revenues with how the Roman Empire would have had to, and I think I believe that's where you talk about the origins of the word province. Essentially, anything outside of Rome, they had divided it into administrative blocks to help in the more efficient collection of revenues and so on.
Yes.
Now, uh, I want to move towards the end of the book, and you have this very fascinating. You talk about the animals and the birds in Ayodhya, and you end with clearing up a popular misconception, or I wouldn't even say a popular misconception, but one of the distortions that have been inadvertently or otherwise introduced, that perhaps one of the reasons why Sita Mata asked Lord Ram to go get the deer, hunt the deer, which was actually,
Marich.
correct, was Marich who the well, okay, so that was actually Marich sent on the instructions of Ravan to lure Ram away from the hermitage, so that would allow, Ravan to go and abduct Sita Mata. But one of the reasons that some people have said, is that she wanted to eat the meat of the deer. She says that bring the deer to me, if not bring the skin. But some have hypothesized that she wanted to eat the meat, and you say that this doesn't hold true. It's not a tenable argument to put forth. Why?
Because in the Valmiki Ramayana, see, a lot of times, a lot of distortions are done on purpose. These distortions, and I notice these distortions, they come definitely around Dashera and Diwali. These are like, this is like a very systematic programming that has been running on for years. And since, because of my own interest in dharma, and as a devotee, I noticed this misinformation campaign. It's a very well-oiled machinery, by the way. You'll notice it come around, these forwards, WhatsApp forwards, memes will be made, and all of that, they come. And they are done to, so for example, they have lost first, when I was younger, Ram is mythology, this is all imagination. Even my grandmother used to tell me that when she would study the Ramayana or talk about the Ramayana, people used to tell her, oh really, you think things can fly in the sky? This is all imagination. And then I remember when I was growing up, she was telling me, I may have said something to her, so she says, don't ever, she says, just because you don't see the technology around you doesn't mean that it did not exist in the past. She said when she was growing up, there was no news of aeroplanes, but if you see the skies now, they are totally, I mean there are air accidents that happen now. So she said, never discount anything just because you have not been exposed to it. So I took that handy. And I took that as a great piece of advice, because it helped me open my eyes to what was written there. Anyways, coming back to Sita, why Sita asked that. And so this earlier, everything was mythology. When you couldn't discount that they are no longer mythology, then the stories of their character has now been started, this distorting the characters of Ram and Sita. And the attack is not on Ram and Sita, the attack is on Hindu Dharma, because they are the
Of
icons
course.
of Hindu Dharma. That's why they are being attacked. Another common attack that I see is on the character of Ram, and there is a distortion on Ravan's character, and his character is now sugar coated, and he is supposed to be the misunderstood hero of the Ramayana, and Bhagwan Ram is supposed to be the villain of the Ramayana. This is the latest new distortion that I come across. So as an observant character, as a person who observes these things, I notice all these slanderous details that come. And one of the things that they find a hook in the imagination of people are the reasons I told you before. The Hindu mind, especially the growing up children mind, is a very fertile mind. First of all, they haven't been taught Sanskrit. Their grandparents no longer are teaching them his stories from the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Like my grandparents taught me. My nani used to sit and talk to me about the. I used to ask her, so tell me stories, tell me stories. So she would sit and she would talk and she would tell me stories. Now, if you ask the grandparents, they hardly would even know how to read Hindi, for that matter. So, let alone reading and telling them stories. So the minds of young children has become very fertile to grab all these untruths, and this is one of the reasons you'll see these being forwarded. And this particular question was asked to me so many times that I thought that I had to write this in the book. Nina, she must have eaten deer. Royals would eat meat in earlier times. I said, sure, they would eat meat, but that is not what she asked the deer for. So in the Ramayana, she says to Ram, Mrigo harati me manaha kridartham naha bhavishyati. So this is on page 266 of Amazing Ayodhya, and my book is replete with shlokas from the Ramayana. So in case you ever doubt what I am saying, the veracity of my words, you can already read the shlokas and match them to to the Valmiki Ramayana. So Mrigo Harati Me Manaha, what does this mean? It says this Mrig is enchanting me. Isne mera man har liya hai. This enchanting, this deer, I have never seen anything like it. Please bring it for me. I want to play with it in the future. So anybody who has read my book would know the kind of animals that are in the palace of Bhagwan Ram and Devi Sita, and why they were there, and why she asks for it, and why does she think that she wants to play with it. So she wants it, she wants to play with it, she wants to show off to her family that look what amazing, what an amazing deer I've got from the jungle. That is her purpose. And then she tells Ram, she understands it'll be very difficult to, what if it's very difficult to catch it alive, because it's a deer, it'll run away, it's not going to come. So she tells Ram that, okay, if you can't catch it, then bring me the skin of the deer. So, and why is the skin of the deer important? Now, the skin of the deer is important because when you are in Vanvas, you are not allowed any material luxuries. Many people do not know this, but there's no material luxury allowed in Vanvas. And when you do puja part, and that is exactly the concept of Vanvas, you have to do puja part, you have to lead a very austere life. It's actually, and to get it at a young age is a punishment. That's why they were given this that's why Kekai sent them for Vanvas. And so she says, so get it, and we will place it on, we'll sit on it together, and we'll place it on the darba grass. Now, darba grass is again a holy grass that we have, during puja. And if over it, over that, you generally put a skin of an animal and you sit on it. And one of the things that the deer skin does is that it repels insects. So it is one
Right.
of the, yeah, so the natural characteristic of deer skin is that it repels insects. And if you read any of the Yog Shastras also tell you to sit on skin, or to sit on, if you can get wool, then you sit on woolen blankets. It is to avoid the gravitation to interfere with your meditation. So that's why you have darba grass, and then over that you have deer skin. So you'll see a lot of pictures of ancient swamis sitting on tiger skin, or any other skin. So it is given for this purpose. A lot of this knowledge is lost to a lot of people, so they don't understand the reasons for her asking this.
And also, I think the fact is that if you are quoting something from the Ramayana, then why not go to the original source, the Valmiki Ramayana, and see if any of the shlokas talk about Sita Devi wanting to eat the deer's meat. It doesn't include any such mention, and yet people, merrily concoct myths around episodes from the Ramayana for their own purposes. The same way that these myths have arisen that on in Lanka, in the battlefield, when Ram finally kills Ravan gives a big long deathbed sermon to Lord Ram on he repents, and on statecraft and all of that. But when you go to the Valmiki Ramayana, you find that that was the end of it. He shot an arrow at Ravan died, and that was the end of him. There was no such deathbed sermon. They probably confuse it with the Mahabharata, but the Mahabharata has almost 19,000 shlokas on the Shanti and Anushasan Parvas. So I think the point that you made is that the that people nowadays have stopped reading the original text. They have stopped learning and reading Sanskrit, I think is a very, very pertinent one. And the consequences of that, I think, are in front of all of us to see. But I think that's a altogether another topic for another discussion. Uh, I so when going through this book, one or two other things that struck me, and perhaps I'll just ask one question out here, is that common with the Indus Valley civilization, of Lothal and Dholavira and other places, and Michel Danino has written very extensively about it. But the architecture and the roadways of these, or the paths of these ancient cities, was very scientific. It was, in fact, more scientific than, unfortunately, what we get to witness in a lot of Indian cities today. We seem to have regressed more than 7,000 years. I think we have gone back to some, but leaving that aside, Ayodhya also was a very well planned city, right?
Yes, Ayodhya was a very well planned city, and the city was planned in a grid pattern. Now, the grid pattern is something that we see even in Dholavira. So there are reasons for making the city in grid pattern. It makes the transportation very easy, and within the grid pattern, the centermost part is always the Garbhagriha. So this is what is the grid pattern of Ayodhya. I don't know if people can see this clearly, but this is given on page 90, and in the chapter How Was Ayodhya Designed. So this grid pattern is made with a lot of detail, and it is again based on Vastu Shastra. Now, the Garbha Griha of any city is not to be violated. By violating, I mean you generally don't cross the Garbha Griha. So the Garbha Griha always has a temple in it, or something. So you kind of go around the Garbha Griha. So this was the sort of pattern in the beginning, and the Puri. So there's a difference between a Nagar and a Puri. So I've also explained that in my book.
Correct.
So in because we no longer know Sanskrit, because a lot of things have changed. So for example, why is it that there are certain cities called Srinagar, Ramnagar, and then there are certain cities with the Pur at the end of it, like or sorry, Pur is the same as Puri. So, and why do we have certain cities called with the Nagar at the end of it? So Ramnagar, you know
And and I believe
these
Ayodhya is always referred to as Ayodhya Puri. I don't think I've seen any description where it says Ayodhya Nagar as such,
No,
right?
it's both. So Valmiki says the Nagari, and then he says Puri. So whenever he says
Interesting.
Puri, yeah, Valmiki actually, and this is what I have clarified in my book. Why does he use Puri, and why does he use Nagar for both of them? So in certain places he says Nagar, and then and in certain places he says Puri. Now we have a Puri in Delhi also. Can you tell me what the Puri in Delhi is?
Oh, of
This is
course,
just a
Chanakya
question for
Puri.
you. Yes, you've read the book now. So so we have Chanakya Puri. So the Puri is the central part, or the capital per se, of the district. Now a Nagar is a district, and the capital of that district. Every district has a capital, by the way, and all of it is very well explained in the book. So I'm going to be brief here. So Chanakyapuri is where all the diplomats stay, where the important people stay, where the PM, the ministers, everybody stays. Similarly, in ancient times, in Ayodhya Puri, the king, the kingsmen, the generals, the senior people, in times of war and in times of emergency, if they are required, they're all close to each other. And then if they have to travel to any part of the district, now a nagar is a district. A district by its meaning means where there are agricultural farmlands, and also built up lands, like the city. So the city and the agricultural area, it's all a mix, so all of it comes under a district, right? So now, whenever the king and his men, so because they're at the center, they need to travel fast to any corner of the city. That is why the grid pattern is very important, and grid pattern facilitates this movement. So this is the Rajpiti, the royal highways. So India has highways as well, and so they also used to have highways. So if you see the layout of Ayodhya, it is made in that pattern that they can go to any part, and people, the flow of people is very easy. The movement of people is very easy. The
Right.
movement of animals. And by the way, this grid pattern is now followed by the West than it is in by Indians. I mean, this is an Indian thing. This is a Hindu, basic Hindu tenet of making a city, and we've lost it. And the West uses it. So, for example, New York is made on a grid pattern. Abu Dhabi is made on a grid pattern, and Chandigarh, I believe, made by a foreigner, is made by a grid. I mean, made on a grid pattern. I mean, amazing. I mean, we just like throw away everything that is ours, and and the West really takes it up and makes it their own.
I think Sri Rabindranath Tagore Gurudev had a very telling comment on that very very peculiar Indian tendency to look towards West for validation when he was awarded the Nobel Prize. But we'll again leave that aside for another discussion. So, so Nina, we come to the conclusion of our Q&A, and I'll read out a couple of comments that have come in. So, for example, Abhishek Singh Keswani says that great Didi Zindabad, amazing Ayodhya, best book ever written. Every single page is filled with divine nectar of knowledge. Very well said and explained by you. We all Hindus are proud of you. I think that's a very, very nice, generous, and I think a good endorsement of not only the effort you've put in, but I also think the way the book has come out. I couldn't have expressed it better. And he also then says when you were reciting a couple of the Sanskrit shlokas from the book, he says, "Wow, beautifully chanted, excellent." And I fully endorse those comments. So I will say this once again for people watching and for people who watch this replay on YouTube, that the book is Amazing Ayodhya, the amazing, the splendid ancient city of Lord Rama. It is available both as a Kindle ebook as well as a paperback. It's been published by Bloomsbury, and it has already got a lot of very, very good reviews and ratings on Amazon. And it is, I think, a wonderful book for all of you to get. We look forward to more such books and works from you. And I wanted to thank you for coming on board this Indica Books Author Q&A. And people can follow you on Twitter and on Instagram. And also you can follow Indica Books on Twitter. And we have a Facebook group with 8,000 members already. Uh, please do that. And I was going to give you the last word, but I will uh, ask you a question that has just been posted, and I'll let that be the last word. So, Shailendra Marathe asks, what can an average Hindu do to improve the situation?
I believe he's talking about the situation with regards to the misinformation campaigns, or
Both the misinformation as well as the general lack of awareness and knowledge about our own epics, our own history, our own culture, our own itihasa that seems to pervade Hindu society.
okay. So I have two suggestions to give to you, Shailendra Marathi ji, and it's a wonderful question, and it's a question that many people do not ask, and I'm so very pleased that you have the intellect to ask that question, and the will to maybe bring a change because you've asked it. There are two things I want to tell you. So the first thing is that you start reading this. You start reading your own scriptures, and if you have children or you have grandchildren, start reading it to them. So the attention frame of children is going to be less. So let's say you read one chapter. Let's say you start with the Valmiki Ramayana, and try and go with the Valmiki Ramayana, and or for that matter the Mahabharata, the original text, not the ones that are written by other authors, because the word itihas as it happened is noted only in the Valmiki Ramayana by Valmiki and Ved Vyasji in the Mahabharata. So I recommend going to the original text, reading it yourself. If you don't have children, if you don't have younger people, then you read it yourself. The way it has been divided in chapters is very easy. If you're looking for recommendations, if you're good in Hindi, then I recommend the Gita Press version. If you prefer English, the English translations, let me warn you, are not perfect. They're rather imperfect, and some of them have they're very naughty. They change the words and they change the meanings, and it's very difficult to understand. But if you want a more authentic version, then you go to IITK. So the chapters are very easily and nicely divided. You can read the chapters yourself, read it out to your family. If there are books like the one that I have read, you buy it and you gift it to people. You read those books, because the way that I have written it, and also other authors who write in the same genre, they give you a very good introduction to they're like a stepping stone, or they're like the first steps of a ladder in understanding Sanskrit, since we are not no longer studying Sanskrit. So these will explain the nitty gritties, the details that reading the direct translations from Sanskrit might not help you. So these are the two things that I recommend. Also, gift these books to people. A lot of times during Diwali, or when there are events happening, we give people flowers. Now flowers are a beautiful thing, but after a few days those flowers are thrown away. But for the same amount, you can gift a book to somebody who is ultimately going to read it, or is going to pass it on to somebody who might read it. So spread this information, because the information warfare today is asymmetrical. So you need to be a part of this information. And then I'll add another thing. Once you read something, try and write something every day. If you can just write a few lines, even if you've taken a book and read it, you post it on social media. Let's say you see this video, or let's say you read my book, or for that matter anybody else from the Indic genre, those who are promoting the truth that is in the itihas. Write a few lines, share about them. In doing so, you are spreading that information, and in doing so, you're also writing about your own history. And anybody, let's say even if there are 100 people connected to you and there are 5 people who read from you, those 5 people will benefit from your writing. I highly recommend anybody doing this to please follow this. And by the way, I used to do this. I'm actually quite prolific on Twitter and now Instagram. So I put a lot of pictures. So I actually do this, and I had been doing this, as a result of which all that writing and all of that, I was able to compile a book like this. So I highly recommend that.
I think very, very great, very useful, practical advice. Uh, any last words? I will leave the last word to you.
Okay, so I wish that everything that we go through as a person teaches us. So when I was going through, when the Ram Janambhoomi was happening, and I saw what was happening, it taught me, and it taught me a good lesson, because in the lesson, in the sense that you can't trust the people before you to tell you the truth. So sometimes you have to search for the truth yourself. So therefore I was able to compile this book, Amazing Ayodhya. Now there are two key things that I use in my life, and which I want to share with people. um, you know these are two quotes, and if you can follow these quotes, you will be able to optimize the purpose of your life. And one of it is, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? So I could have chosen to live the life that I wanted to in the West. I mean, I didn't lack anything. I was having a great time. At a later age, studying, whatever. And then this quote struck me, and I said, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? So, if this bothers me, then I have to, act on it. And then another thing is that the biographies, the history of the world, is nothing but the biographies of a few men. So these are two quotes that, if you will, imbibe in your life, that if you will, ponder too, it'll bring you closer to your purpose, and it'll inspire you to do better and greater things in life.
Very wise words. Thank you, Neena ji, for spending the time with us. And I hope people like this. This will be available on YouTube and elsewhere. And with those words, thank you again, and thank you for watching.
Thank you, Abhinav ji, for having me on your show. Thank you for all the comments, and thank you for everybody who has tuned in. Thank you so much. And thank you for the lovely questions. And for those who don't know, I share a lot of snippets of whatever I've learned, whatever I've gathered over the years. I have a YouTube channel by the name Neena Rai. Please go take a look. I discuss the eclipse, and there is my research, my original research called the eclipse that changed the fate of Ayodhya. You may want to take a look at that. Then there are the kings of Ayodhya. So the small like videos I put across to share my knowledge with everybody. So those who are interested in knowing itihas, they really like the channel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.